May is Mental Health Awareness Month. You're going to hear that everywhere right now. Statistics, campaigns, reminders to check in. And some of that matters. But for some people, this was never something they had to become aware of. It's always been real. In fact, it's everyday life. My guest today is Kristen Christy. She's known publicly as a resilience trainer, a national speaker, a co-creator of the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, someone who has helped shape how this country responds when people reach their breaking point. She's received more recognition than I could list here, from Air Force Spouse of the Year to national level awards for advocacy and impact across the military community. But none of that is where her story actually begins. It starts in a place that is much harder to talk about. Kristen lost her first husband, a service member, to suicide after deployment. And that kind of loss doesn't stay contained to a moment. It doesn't resolve. It doesn't make sense over time. It changes everything permanently. And if that were the end of the story, it would already be more than most can carry. But it wasn't for her. In the years that followed, both of her sons would attempt to take their own lives. That's where this conversation lives. Not in theory, not in awareness campaigns, but in the space after something like that happens, and you're still here, still a parent, still responsible for holding things together, still trying to figure out what moving forward even looks like. There is no roadmap for that, no way to do it right, no version of that experience that leaves you unchanged. And yet, Kristen didn't disappear inside it. She stayed. And over time, she turned that experience outward, not to explain it away, but to build something that didn't exist when she needed it. She became part of creating the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. She created National Resilience Day. She's shown up in rooms and conversations that most people would never choose to walk into. But what stands out about her isn't just what she's done, it's how she carries all of it. There's a steadiness about her that you just don't fake. Actually, let me rephrase that. It can't be faked. She reflects a kind of clarity that only comes from having been forced to face the worst of it and choosing to stay in it. She talks about hope. Hold on, pain eases. And let me tell you something. When she says it, it doesn't sound simple, okay? It sounds like something that she had to hold on to when nothing around her felt stable. So as you listen to this conversation, understand where it begins. It begins with a decision and its consequences, a decision that didn't just take one life, a decision that changed the trajectory of an entire family. That decision carried forward into her home, into her children's lives, into the years that followed. That's the part that people don't always see. Not just the moment of loss, but the echo of it. Mental Health Awareness Month can sometimes start to feel like messaging overload. But this is what it looks like when the issue is personal, when it has a name, when it shows up in your family and doesn't leave, ever. What Kristen has done since her husband took his life, building, showing up, staying in the work, that didn't come from a title or a platform. It came from living through something that most people never have to face and making the decision over and over and over again not to step away from it. That's where this conversation comes from. Before we wrap, I'm going to take a second and say some things that I don't usually say on this podcast. Kristen, this is personal for me. You have become someone I look to in this work, not just for what you've done, but for how you do it, what you've built for the military and veteran communities, for families, for people in their darkest moments. It matters. It has changed things. It has saved lives. And I don't say that lightly. I asked you recently to serve on the GenVets board of directors. And when you said yes, you don't know this, but I cried. Well, now everyone knows. But this work done the right way requires a certain kind of person, and you are that person. So I just wanted to say thank you for your courage, for staying in this, for continuing to show up, even while I know you're still carrying your own pain, because you are, and that matters. It matters that people understand you're not speaking from a place of distance or from something that's already been resolved. You're living this still, and somehow you keep choosing to show up for other people who are in it too. And I'm going to say one more thing just as plainly as I can. I love you. And I need people listening to understand something. You're different. There's no agenda here. There's no performance. You're doing this because you care about saving lives. And that shows in everything you say and everything you've built. And for everyone listening, please remember, we don't always know what others are carrying. We don't always see what they're walking through still. But sometimes, if we listen closely enough, we can hear it. So if you take anything from this conversation, take that. Pay attention to her. Really listen. I'm Jen Wagman, and this is Vetted. Hi, Kristen. It's so nice to have you with me today. You are the co-creator of the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, and you are such an inspiration to me. I am going to let you start talking and tell me a little bit about how your journey started.
Absolutely. And thanks, Jen. The only thing that would be better than this morning is if we were in person.
Absolutely. You know how I feel about that.
I am a product of the Air Force. I grew up in the Air Force. I loved every single bit of it. Maybe not at the moment it was happening with all the moves. We moved every 2 years. My dad was in Intel, and we moved a lot, but we moved all over the world. And my parents were very intentional on getting embedded in our community, whatever that community was, whether it was Omaha, Nebraska, or Okinawa, Japan, San Vito, Italy, or San Antonio, Texas. We got embedded in our communities as soon as we unpacked all the boxes and did the inventories and all of that fun stuff. And my younger brother and I thought that it was to help us get educated on cultural differences. But later on, we came to find out that it was about that, but it was also that our community was there for us when we needed them. It was learning about the superpower of community and the sense of belonging, because that sense of belonging was up to us.
Yes.
We were the new people. I loved when back then, so just get this out of the way. I say I'm 39 plus shipping and handling. 58 years of being in the military, because it was no surprise when I married into the Air Force as well. But we used to have sponsor families, and it was wonderful. It helped with that sense of belonging. And we really came to understand the superpower of community when I was 15 years old. It was 1983. We had just moved to Wiesbaden, Germany, and I had a massive stroke just before my 16th birthday. I was a world-class athlete before that, had great plans, already had scholarships for college, and there was a detour to the plans, right? They're typically a detour.
I would
And
say.
it was our community that came alongside of us.
Where were you when you had the stroke?
We were living in Germany, but we were at Hahn, Germany. My dad was a wing commander, and one of his squadrons was at Hahn, a little town in Germany. And I had been having headaches for 2 weeks, or 2 months rather, but the doctors thought that it was stress from moving to a foreign country and just the stressors of being a military child, if you
Mhm.
will. And my schedule, I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning to play tennis or practice, went to my junior year in high school, and then golf practice after that because it was golf season. Um, and it was right after the Beirut bombing of the Marine Corps barracks. So Landstuhl, the big army hospital in Germany, was concentrating on our service members. And it was my Sunday school teacher in Wiesbaden, who happened to be a doctor at Wiesbaden Hospital. His roommate from the Air Force Academy was the top neurosurgeon in the Air Force in San Antonio, Wilford Hall. So I was air evac to Wilford Hall. It took me a year and a half to learn to walk again after brain surgery. And my community came alongside, Jen,
Mhm.
because the competitiveness was not taken away with the stroke. I really learned that my identity was not based on what I did, but who I was, that
Mhm.
inherent character. And we would have crawling races. They would come over after school and we would have crawling races because I
That's
needed to learn
amazing.
to crawl before I could walk again. I write with my left hand now because my right hand just doesn't, I don't have the fine motor movements. So it's finding new avenues for my talents. Do you see some similarity between what I went through in the veteran community?
I
Right?
do just a little bit.
Our identity is based on who we are, not what we do, not our rank, not our specialty code or MOS or the firearm we may carry because of our job duties. It's who we are as a person, because when we take off the uniform, we have to find new avenues for our talents sometimes. And it's our community that has fresh eyes and can help us do that. And sometimes, I suggest people use resources that they have, whether it's friends in their community, family members, or even maybe some AI. I'm not as familiar with AI. I know a lot of people are using it for good things.
Oh, I have several different friends on AI that I use for
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
name them, but I shouldn't say that because my family will make fun of me incessantly for it. But yes,
But they're
yeah,
tools, right?
they
And if
are
we can
true.
learn to use the tools and use the
Right.
resources, it's so important. But find out, get the definition of a character,
Yes.
what your character is. I love when I do workshops, especially with military spouses, uh, to use some apps that talk about your character strengths. And when you get down to it, find out what your character is all about, and then take a look at that, or have someone else, fresh eyes, take a look
Mhm.
at it to find, okay, what are some opportunities I have outside the military where I can use my character in that job or that career?
And translating, that's an excellent piece of advice because translating that piece of it in conjunction with some of the skills, that's the definition of skill bridge. That's
Yes.
bridging you as a person with your community, with the community you came from. And that's a really key piece that you just had there. So tell me a little bit about your time in the military as a spouse.
Yes, yes. It was, again, it was no surprise when I married into the military. It was when I went off to college. Again, my scholarships were taken away, rightly so. I was considered handicap, disabled. And I went to the University of Texas at Austin because we were Texas residents. My dad was smart and kept his Texas residency from when we lived in San Antonio eons before that. And I needed to find my community. Now, Jen, you and I have spent some time together. You know that I am an extrovert. I get my energy from external sources.
Mhm.
And even though I'm that extrovert, I needed to find my community because UT at the time was the largest university population wise, 54,000 students. Well, I had grown up on military installations all over the world my entire life. So it made sense that I would kind of hang out at their ROTC building. They
Interesting.
spoke my language.
Yes.
I,
Yes.
I was used to that culture. And I joined Angel Flight, which is Silver Wings now. And I could not raise my right hand to take the oath because of my stroke. So I raised my left hand to volunteer and say, I want to be a part of this. And it was like my sorority in
Oh,
college. Still 40 years later, still great friends with so many of the Silver Wings and Arnold Air Society members and ROTC members. But it was my junior year. I went to a party. There was only one person I didn't know at the party. And of course, it was like, oh, it was bothering me. So I went right up to him and I said, Hi, I'm Kristen Anderson. He said, Hi, I'm Don Christy. We can never get married.
that is hysterical.
I'm like,
Is that a
I'm,
dare?
I'm thinking, what kind of pickup line is that? And then I said, Well, why? And he goes, You would be Kristen Christy. I don't take no for an answer.
Oh my Lord.
5 months later, we were engaged. 2 years later, we got married a week after he was commissioned in the Air Force. And our first assignment was Grand Forks, North Dakota.
I think there could be a spinoff from Vetted on these stories because I've had some of the greatest engagement and marriage and husband finding stories on this show. Maybe it's the
Yeah.
military part of it, but
I,
that's awesome. Okay, I
yeah.
love it.
We say the military is a small world. I just think the military leaves a big footprint,
It does.
a big
It
footprint.
does indeed. Yes.
So off to Grand Forks, North Dakota, we went. We got embedded in our community. If you've ever been to Grand Forks, it's
Oh,
the
I have
extreme
not.
winters. We're away from town. We really became a community, a tight knit community. We had our first son there. We got an assignment to Colorado Springs, where I live now, and we loved the community. It was the first time we had lived off base.
Okay.
And I thought, wonderful, we're going to be ambassadors for the military, not really realizing that we have 5 military bases here.
Correct.
I was not the only ambassador. That's for sure. But Don's goal for his military career was to be a lieutenant colonel and a squadron commander. That was the goal he was trying to attain. And he came home soon, about 2 years after we moved to Colorado Springs, and said, my active duty career is not going the way I want it to. And so I think I'm going to separate from the Air Force. And that shocked me because that's the only way I've known. And uh, he informed me about the Air Force Reserve. So he joined the Air Force Reserve as a traditional reservist and a contractor. And pretty soon he became full-time reserve and he became a squadron commander as a major. And it was the largest squadron in the Air Force Reserve at the time. They were running the GPS out at Schriever Space Force Base now. And he came home in 2003 kind of asking, but I knew he wasn't asking. I was smart enough to know he wasn't asking.
Mhm.
And he said, Kristen, I have been tasked with getting volunteers to deploy to Baghdad. And I don't feel right asking for volunteers unless my name is at the top of the list. That's when I knew he was a leader. I had heard people loved working with him. He was a great leader, but that showed me a manager, supervisor says go, and a leader says let's go. And he said, let's go. And he was the only one chosen. He went to Baghdad. He was second in command at the Baghdad airport in 2004. Gone for 4.5 months. We heard about how Toby Keith took a nap on his couch when he came through for a USO tour and meeting Donald Rumsfeld. He came home with the Bronze Star, and I know that you don't earn the Bronze Star by having Toby Keith take a nap on your couch or Ted Nugent sign your gun holster. But he really didn't talk about it. And it wasn't clearance related. It was just, he couldn't talk about it. And so he came back different. We hear about it during pre-deployment. I think the military is really good about offering opportunities for families before deployment, during deployment, post deployment, to come together with information that they have learned through all these decades of deployments. And so we had information. And Jen, I say knowledge is potential power, right? It's not just power, it's potential power. And I knew something was wrong. Our relationship was on the rocks. Reintegrating with the boys was very difficult. We had two boys, and I thought when he got orders for Army War College, so we're Air Force, we're going Army War College, we're going to learn Army-ese, right?
Yeah.
We're going to learn a new language and be embedded in our community. And Carlisle was a great year. We had a lot of fun at Carlisle Barracks, and he was reintegrating with the boys. We were still working on our relationship. It was still quite rocky. And of course, I wanted to fix everything. That's not the way it works. And just before we moved to DC, because he had a follow-on at the Pentagon, we got the call that they needed us back in Colorado, or they needed him, not me. They needed him back in Colorado Springs at Air Force Space Command. And a year later is when he took his life 3 days before he pinned on Colonel. Our boys were 12 and 14 at the time. And our community came alongside when we needed them the most. I made one phone call and our house was filled with people. But his choice has everlasting effects. I remember I called my Bible study leader, and she and her husband came over to the house before I told the boys, after I was notified. And it took a while. The boys were in shock, of course. Again, 12 and 14, hearing this news, and I was trying to be as gentle as possible, doing the best that I could with the tools that I had, Jen, right?
Yeah.
And our oldest son looked at me and said, Mom, why didn't he love us enough?
That must have been devastating. I mean,
I'm so glad we were embedded in our community.
yeah.
Because I could not have done it alone. I made mistakes. There were times where I didn't take the boys to school because I couldn't get my butt out of bed. And my friends would come over and they wouldn't take my boys to school. They got me out of bed and made me take my boys to school. That's the superpower of community. So I know you asked one question, my friend, and it took this. I told you the whole journey, and it's still going on.
What did you do after you collected? How do you collect yourself? You're still collecting yourself. I imagine when you decided that there was something to be done, when was that moment? Describe that to me.
I will say for 2 years, I did not work. I had been a stay-at-home mom, and my mother kept saying, Kristen, you've got to get a job, get a job. It's the structure. I was trying to help the boys navigate through this. And I will tell you, I made mistakes. I protected my kids too much. I was not a helicopter mom. I was an Apache helicopter mom. I mean, oh, my junior in high school would leave his homework at home, and I finally got a job as a receptionist making $23,000 a year. I mean, entry level job, even though I have a degree. And I would leave work to go, and halfway to home I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I mean, he's 17 years old.
We're all guilty of this.
Right? But I did them such a disservice, truly, truly. And I want people to learn from my mistakes. The difference between a smart person and a smart person learns from their own mistakes, a wise person learns from others' mistakes. So I want your listeners to be wise. You got to let your kids deal with some consequences of their choosing. We've had to deal with the consequences of someone else's choice, and it's been difficult. But it was 2 years after Don's suicide and 2 days after I called 911 for our oldest son's second attempt, and we didn't have a very good interaction with law enforcement. And I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I tell you, I'm sure I'm not the only one, but God talks to me between 3 and 5 o'clock in the morning. And a lot of times those thoughts are fleeting because they're big ideas. They're big, bodacious ideas. And yeah, that's a great idea. But I'm not in the rooms to make it happen. It's too big for me. I'm not where, who am I to make that happen? And in 2010, I woke up and I said, we have a 3-digit medical emergency number. Why don't we have a 3-digit number for a mental health emergency? We've had the 800-273-TALK Suicide Lifeline since 2005. And that is still active. I will say that right now. It is still active. It's still available. But when you're in crisis or a loved one is in crisis, that's a hard number to remember unless you have it in your phone. And not many people think about having something like that in their phone.
I can't remember my own phone number or my parents' phone number when something like that is happening. And that's the God's honest truth. So
Yep.
I
But
understand.
Jen, do you remember your phone number growing up?
I do.
You do. So do I.
Eight
The
six seven three
smartphones,
five
right?
Jenny. No, I'm just kidding.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, the smartphones can be a tool, a useful tool, but sometimes, I like to think that they leave some brain cells for more important things. But what's more important, if your phone has died and you have to use someone else's phone, calling your parents and not remembering their number is difficult. So I became obsessed. Some people may say I became possessed. I'm like, how do we make this happen? Because as we go through trauma, we don't want other people going through what we've gone through in life, right? We want, whether that's our children, we want to make things easier for them, or the community that we're embedded in, we want to make it easier. So I got outside my comfort zone, even though I was an extrovert. After that trauma, I became pretty reclusive and was not my jovial self necessarily. And it took a process to get back. Ryan, our oldest, and Ben,
Okay.
both had attempted. Ryan, it was after his second attempt. And I just started socializing the idea of a 3-digit lifeline number. I didn't know. I was telling everyone I could. I was telling my plumber. I was telling whoever I could tell.
That's so interesting. And I'm actually really glad to hear you say that. We haven't talked about this part of it before, but there are a lot of people who I love that are going to be listening to this. I get a lot of flack for I know this is going to shock you. People say I talk a lot.
No.
It's possible that, and my own family seems to think that I always bring it back to me. But when it comes back down to it, what I'm talking about is the veterans and
Right.
the ideas that I have. It's not actually about Jen and like my nails or my, which maybe need to be done. Now, it's not it's not about like me. It's about the work and the floating of ideas and the things that I'm doing. I get so, what about this? What about that? Because there's so many problems, there are so many things that I'm thinking about, and they're my sounding board. But I
Mhm.
also go to the grocery store. I go to and this is the truth. Like, what do you think I'm doing? And so I often I'm critical of myself for doing
Mm.
that. But the fact that you do it, I'm all right.
I want to encourage you not to be critical. Enough people are critical of us, right? It's um it's what's between our ears. We're with ourselves 24/7, and what we say to ourselves matter. There's a saying, if you had a friend who spoke to you the way you sometimes speak to yourself, how long would that person stay your friend? Right?
That's very smart, what you just
Not
said.
very long. So I call it the stinking thinking from the itty bitty shitty committee between
Oh
our
my
ears,
gosh.
right?
Yeah.
And we have to change that narrative, because my narrative at the time was, well, this is too big, no one's going to go for it. Yeah, we have 911, they can handle it. But we didn't have a very good experience. And maybe it would have been, well, maybe we can help law enforcement understand a mental health issue, or suicidal ideation. And that has happened in different segments of the US. Like here in Colorado Springs, um, my uh, my new groom of 12 years, we met on Match.com. It works.
I love it.
He was in the Navy Reserve when I met him, and I'm a recruiter. I convinced him to cross over to the Air Force.
I can't with you.
But his mom was a psychiatric nurse for 40 years.
Wow,
And
okay,
our oldest son, Ryan, was diagnosed with bipolar.
okay.
And Sean's brother lives with schizophrenia. Do you think Sean, my new groom,
Mhm.
do you think his mother understood what we were going through? Right?
Yeah,
I'm a woman of faith. I believe that God puts people in your path when you are on a mission.
and you know how I feel about that. We've spoken about that,
Yep.
as do I, yes.
And so you never know if that person is at the grocery store looking at the mac and cheese variations right next to you, or the produce, right?
It
Uh,
would it'd be, SpaghettiOs for me.
Breakfast of champions when I was in
Uh-huh,
college.
exactly. Hey, nonprofits, the funny thing about them is they don't actually make profit.
Well, and my mom's philosophy, I love this philosophy growing up, besides getting embedded in our community, because it has
Mhm.
helped us so much. And we've been able to help other people in our community because of that. But one of her philosophies, and she was an amazing woman. I miss her every day. A fantastic military spouse as well. If you don't ask, the answer's no. If you ask, you have a chance. If you have a chance, take it. And if it changes someone's life, let it. That's what I try and live by. And so socializing ideas, asking, what do you think about this? And if you get the answer no, it could be a gut punch, it could be a heart punch. It's an acronym for next opportunity.
Someone wise once told me that, and I've been saying it ever since.
I'm glad to hear that. It's in my book that will come out next year. That's the acronym that I'm known for the most. Now, there's a caveat to that.
Mhm.
No means no when it comes to your body. It's a complete sentence. But you didn't get the job that you wanted. You didn't get the assignment you wanted. Um, you didn't get the relationship that, divorce or breakup. That's a big fat no, right? And not knowing what you're going through at any one time, when you receive the answer no, it could be a gut punch or a heart punch. But if you can reframe your thinking going, okay, yes, it hurts. Feel the feelings. And then look at, okay, what's my next opportunity? I think nonprofits are really good about doing that. I don't know if veterans are as good. Some veterans, right? I'm generalizing, but and when you have to give the answer no, not knowing what the person receiving that no is going through, spending a little bit of time helping them find their next opportunity, finding new avenues for their talents is important. And sometimes we have to sit in the no and take reflection on ourselves. And that's what I did after Donda. You know, my oldest son's been missing for over 10 years. I talk about the aftermath, Jen. We don't talk about it as much. More and more people are talking about it. I am very open to talking about the aftermath. Both of my children attempted. My oldest son's been missing for over 10 years. I have to reflect, not that I failed as a spouse and I failed as a mother, because I looked at it that way. But FAIL is an acronym for first attempt in learning or further attempt in learning, never final attempt in learning. We are always learning. And we're learning these tough lessons, but we have to use the lessons to help other people, to tutor other people through their tests. Or we use them, like I did the lessons I learned during my stroke, to help get through the obstacles. To you know, a lot of people talk about resilience as about bouncing back. I think resilience has three parts. It's feeling the feelings, bouncing back. But I'm going to age myself. There was something when I was growing up, it was Bozo the Clown that you blew up, and he had sand in the bottom, and you punched him and he hit the ground and then came back up. He bounced back, right? But he was in the same spot, and I don't want to be in the same spot. And then you march forth. It's not a straight line. It can be jagged. There are detours in life that happen. Don't do the journey alone. Find people in a community that help you feel protected, respected, and connected.
The mantra of Gen Vets, as you are considering it, is always forward. That's all I'm going to say about that. It makes it difficult to say no to me, isn't it?
That's one reason why I created National Resilience Day. It's on March 4th
March
because
4th.
we march forth and conquer.
And March 4th was why that was created, because one of the women who inspired it was born on March 4th.
Yeah.
And her father told her she was born to be a soldier on
Yes.
March 4th.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
So that's the underpinnings of that. It was a beautiful story.
Conquer our disappointments and our adversities and our itty bitty shitty committee between our ears.
Yes.
So dealing with all of that, people in my community came alongside. They introduced me to people. Then I started working with the White House administrations, a couple different administrations, and 988 was born. I say I'm a co-creator because a lot of people who understood to work with the FTC and the FCC and how to make 988 happen, because it was an area code, I think in Washington State or California, and it was signed in 2020 as an executive order. In October of 2021, we all got a text message from our cell phone carrier saying, you have to dial 10 digits even for a local number now. Some people were upset with that, but when they understood why, that it was so we can get 988 to be created. And July 16th of 2020.
I didn't know that until just now. So that's why. That's all right, everybody. We have to dial 1, right? Because now that's so that 988.
Yep.
could
It can
be.
save lives.
What an interesting piece of knowledge. I don't recall that if that's why, but I have no problem with that.
Well, when they sent the text message out, it didn't say why you had to dial 10 digits instead of the 7 digits for a local number.
Why give people that information so that they understand? I mean,
Exactly. Exactly. My husband was listening to talk radio and the DJ was complaining, I have to dial 10 digits to call my wife. She's in the same area code. And my husband called and explained why. And they ended up interviewing me. And he's like, okay, I take it all back.
this is, I won't go on too much of a tangent, but people are so, this goes on about me talking and text. I also, you text too much, you write too much. We have become the society that also doesn't explain anything.
Yeah.
And so then we go on these other stupid rants and you've got TikTok and all, that people are dumb because they start spouting off on things that they haven't been educated on. And
Right.
it's not their fault if they haven't been given information. Why not just
Exactly.
give all the information first? How hard is it to give a paragraph on why? That would have been good information and really probably that's how we become a community. That's how we support.
That would have marketed 988, not marketed, but advertised 988. 911 came on board in, I think, 67 or 68, 1968. And they did such a good job of advertising that number because they were educating it in the schools. We hear about 5-year-olds calling 911 because mommy won't wake up from a nap. Mom's in a diabetic coma. We teach them at such a young age. That would have been a great opportunity to explain why you have to dial 10 digits now. And to say in July 16th of 2022, 988 will come on board and be activated.
In the same way.
But right now, the last I heard, 27% of adults know about 988.
But not enough.
And so thank you for the opportunity to talk about this to your listeners,
Kristen,
to get the word out.
I actually think that one of the things that Gen Vets is focusing will be one of the initiatives going forward. And Zero Mills introduced me to this concept, and I think it's critical. We don't do, as a country, a good enough job of teaching our youth about service and the concept of service. It does not have to be military service.
Right.
You can serve your country, you can serve your neighbor, you can serve your community in so many different ways.
Yeah.
We as leaders, whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's corporate, whether it's government, state, we need to be educating our youth that we have a responsibility to go in and assist with our youth, because if we don't, we are not any longer going to have an all voluntary military. We are not any longer, and it, like I said, it doesn't have to be that they are volunteering, but that mindset is no longer there. And as we talked about earlier, for whatever reason, we, as our generation of parenting, didn't do it it's not that we didn't do it the right way intentionally, but something happened. There was a gap in the way that our parents did it and the way we did it. I think it has a lot to do with the technology, the world that we live in, and our fears, 9/11,
Yep.
just a lot of different ways, but we have to shift it back. And so one of the things with Gen Vets that I personally have committed to, with that organization is, and once things, sort of get to a little, this is 2 years I'm in now, I want to be going in to the schools. I love talking to elementary school kids. I think they are the perfect age to absorb this mindset and this understanding. It's about looking up from your device. It can 5 minutes, it can take 15 minutes. Think about Mrs. Jones next door. Does she need anything? Does she need to, it can be, not just checking the box about drawing stick figures on a card, but you have to be thinking, not just about me. My kids will not pass someone on the street that's wearing a uniform without saying thank you for your service. Now, listen, I know that's trite to a lot of people now, but my kids, they understand what it means to wear the uniform.
Yeah.
And so as they grow up, and I'm, that is not going to be lost on them. Not everybody feels that way. And I know even some service people, it doesn't mean as much anymore, but that's sad too. And that's
Yeah.
why you're going to see in my motto is greatest generations, because they don't any longer feel there was only one greatest generation.
Right.
Guess what? They shouldn't be feeling that way.
Yeah.
They're all generations. We treat them all with that respect. Anyone who put the uniform on should be feeling that from us, from
Yes.
our communities. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because I think it's really important, is I'm hearing in the last 18 months from traveling around and seeing in the statistics is that the needle isn't really moving when it comes to post-traumatic growth, when it comes to mental health, mental wellness, post-traumatic stress, the suicide rate. We can talk about the marginal amount of decrease, but if you're looking at the real numbers, they're so much higher when you consider the things that aren't tracked.
Yeah.
So what I hear from the surviving families and those affected is you're not asking us what our feelings and thoughts are on how to build models, on how to do things that are truly going to work. So that's sort of what I'm working on now, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. And as I travel around to military bases and the veteran community and do what I love, it sets my soul on fire. And communicating with these people, I think it gets down to a feeling of loneliness. And we all know now that being lonely, you can be with a room full of people. I think the bridge to that, from getting from loneliness to a sense of fulfillment, it doesn't have to be a total life fulfillment, right? Is that sense of belonging. And belonging is um, in the micro moments, not grand gestures necessarily. It's when people notice that, hey, he hasn't been himself lately. We all have Eeyore days, right? We all have bad days, but when it extends longer, it gets harder. And I will say too, Jen, I know the VA, I know the military, Department of Defense or Department of War, uh, ha- is working on this. It's not on the front burner because we have other things in the world that are going on. I think they're trying. I think we can be risk adverse. It takes time. The one finite resource we have, 1,440 minutes at every day. Um, but it's really tough to track the positives. Yes, the recent VA suicide report for 2024 recently came out, and it showed that things have numbers have reduced, percentages have reduced. We're now tracking military spouse and dependent suicides as well. But we can't track when XYZ program saved someone's life, because a lot of times they don't want to admit, right? There's shame and guilt surrounding the ideation. Shame off us, first of all. Guilt is not guilt, it's regret. That's what I had to come to learn. Those are lessons I learned because I was feeling shame and guilt. It wasn't guilt, it was regret. It was, I have to remember, I have to forgive myself for doing things while trying to survive, but I also have to be gentle with myself because I was doing the best that I could with the tools that I had. And because of that lesson I learned, I have a very well stocked resource and resources in my back pocket, in my tool belt. We use that a lot as a visualization. My phone is chock full of resources. My brain is chock full of resources. But it's hard to gauge the positiveness that comes through. And even on an individual basis, I'm sure you've dealt with it too. Is Gen Vets doing, is it working toward the mission? Is it doing good? And it's when I think, oh, I need to get a regular W-2 job and not do this. And that's when I get a text message or an email
Yep.
from someone that said, I saw you speak 5 years ago at Fairchild Air Force Base, and it has resonated with me. And because of that 5 years ago, I have now, been able to help my wingmen, or been able to help my children through, or been able to help myself, or have felt well enough and confident enough to go to my commander to self-admit that I need mental health services.
It's crazy how that happens, isn't it? I mean, really, really crazy.
God puts those things, the universe, whatever your listeners think, right?
I wish, for people who didn't believe you, like you could see that, how that happens, how often that happens. Cause I know, oh, it's a coincidence. Yeah, but is what I was saying.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but.
call them gotchas. I'm writing, besides the acronym book with no
Mhm.
next opportunity, fail, first attempt in learning. I'm writing a gotcha series. It's
Gotcha.
GODCHA.
Oh, that's cool. Okay,
It
I got you. I
it
got you.
goes God winks, right?
Okay. Yeah, God winks. That's right.
But so many times, and that's why it's important, if you have a great idea, to talk about
Hmm.
it at the grocery store, to talk about it in the waiting room with the other
Yeah.
people at your dentist's office, um, to talk about it at an event at the table you're at, if you aren't sitting too close to the speakers.
I'm sorry. Who's that shout out to? You're
Yeah.
gonna have to, what's his name?
So Jen's table at the Red Star Foundation was very close to the speakers, and we were trying to talk, and it's like, we've got to get together outside this event.
Wait,
It
but
was a great event.
did I get called out from the speaker's podium by who?
Yeah.
I
Um,
will say that it was a gesture of kindness to put us that close up front. I don't
yeah,
think anybody was even thinking about that. So I did
right.
appreciate the placement up
Yes.
front,
Yes.
which was very, very fun. So
Yeah.
I like to tease them about that. And it was funny because Tish Stropes with Fisher House Foundation, she was right in front of the
Oh,
speaker.
yeah.
And she thought it was hilarious when I was told to be quiet from the stage because I was trying to talk, and I guess they were trying to quiet everyone down. And it was Jen, quiet.
Well, thank goodness there are other Jens. I guarantee you, out of the 500 people there were other Jens. But
I didn't even hear it, and then Tish was like, "That's hilarious," and I was like, "Did he just say my name?" And
called out.
Kristen, from Partners in Purpose, looked at me and said, "I don't know, but I think so." And I wanted to fall under the table and die, but because Tish thought it was funny, and she was laughing hard, I was like, well, at least somebody's having a good time right now because I can't hear anything, but I'm loud, and what else is new?
No, it's but we've got to socialize those ideas no
Yes.
matter where, because the right people will come into your path.
I think that and we have to wrap up, I know, but I do think that the takeaway from all of this is, and from the work that I'm doing, with Gen Vets, with the book that I'm writing, the people that the professionals across the country that I'm talking to, trying to bring together who understand the same underlying philosophy, um, is that suicide and mental health in the veteran and military communities is not actually a mental health problem crisis in most situations. It is a community issue. And when we can address it as such, when we can bring in the civilian population and the communities surrounding our veterans and military members who are stationed around, and educate and teach so that there's an understanding and they understand this isn't just about them, those families, those veterans, those veteran kids, the kids of veterans,
Right.
the things that they're going through. And there's no stigma. There's no, well, oh, I don't want to go near anybody. And isolation, as you said,
Yes.
it's not a them problem. It is an us problem. And we
Yeah.
all have to deal with it together in order to make those numbers go away.
Yeah.
That's what we want. Go down, but go away.
Right.
Because unless there's understanding among all of us, it's not going to get better. There's going to be continued isolation, continued misunderstanding. And we need to contribute to the solution together.
And when we're in crisis, that's the least likely time we're going to ask for help. So
That's
it takes
correct.
those of us in a good place and noticers, because again, time, that finite resource, it takes time. My youngest son, Ben, he was 12 when his dad died. He was 20 when he attempted suicide. 8 years later, he was at the University of Arizona and I was living in Colorado Springs. He called at 1:30 in the morning and left me this voicemail the night he attempted. This young man sobbing, I miss my dad. I can't live without my dad. Mom, why won't you answer? My cell phone was off. It was 2015. But his fraternity brothers came alongside. They heard his cries for help, literally his cries for help, and they got him the help that he needed. And then they came alongside Mama Kristen
Mhm.
and helped me. And I will say, Ben now is a government employee working in California. He's married. His son, my first grandbaby, turns 1 today.
That's amazing.
And little Cal is going to be a big brother in October.
That's wonderful.
Ben is living his best
Amazing.
life. It took time, it took resources. 988 is available for you when you're in crisis. It's available to you when you have a loved one in crisis. You can call and say, I'm calling for a friend. I don't know how to help my friend. And you can call and you will receive prompts. Dial 1 if you're a military veteran or family member, and you reach the Veteran Crisis Line. You reach someone who has the cultural understanding of being a veteran or being in the military or a family member. Dial 2 for Spanish speakers. And in Washington State, only right now, you can dial 4 for the indigenous community, and you reach someone with the cultural understanding of being a part of the indigenous community. But Jen, this is it's available in the U.S. It's available in the U.S. territories. It's available throughout Canada now.
That's
Canada
amazing.
has adopted it, and it's available from overseas military bases from government landlines. It is global. And the end of February, I got the call the beginning of March, but by the end of February, since July 16th of 2022 to the end of February of 2026, they've answered 17 million calls.
Wow.
And
7
that's just in
million.
the US. It's bittersweet.
Is there anything that you need? Is there anything in your continued efforts with this that people can be doing to support?
Using 988, I don't work for 988. It's overseen by the federal government and contractors, but I certainly want the information out there that it is available for people. And if you have listeners that are looking for a sense of purpose. Every state has call centers. 988 is routed to the state's call center where you're located. So I could be in Washington, D.C., and call 988 from my 719 cell phone number, and I'll reach the crisis centers in the D.C. area.
Okay.
But if any of your listeners are looking for an opportunity to have that sense of purpose and fulfillment, check out search for the state that you live in and the crisis center, and see if they have opportunities to where they will train you on how to answer and how to navigate through the 988. I also want to suggest to your listeners that sometimes people just need someone to listen to them. And as a professional speaker, and Jen, following what your family says that you talk a lot, right? There's an acronym that we need to think about when we are listening, because it's a skill. And the acronym is WAIT. Why am I talking? It's okay to have pauses. You don't have to fill those pauses. You don't have to fix what's going on. But to be seen and heard is healing in itself. And it creates hope. Hope is not a feeling. We create hope. And as we're ending, I'll end with the two definitions that hope stands for. Hold on, pain eases. That E does not stand for end. It ebbs and flows. Hold on to your trusted people. Hold on to resources. Hold on to your faith. It's not a pie in the sky. We hear it in the military and veteran community. Hope is not a strategy. It's not a strategy, but it's a stopgap. And it could mean the difference between life and death. And hope also stands for help one person every day. Getting back to that sense of service, that sense of giving of yourself. When we're going through things in life to get outside of our own circumstances and help other people, there's power in that. Absolute power in that. Because we don't know what pain they're going through. And hope is not canceled.
I can't tell you how much I have enjoyed talking to you today. I can't tell you how much I appreciate having you in my life, and
I feel the same.
Thank you for agreeing to come on and share your story and everything else that I think you definitely, you continue to teach me, but also that you've given to everybody else, I think is a gift. So you are a gift. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
I
Jen.
look forward to talking to you offline, and thank you again.
Get ready to partner. We're going to make a difference.
Thank you so much. All right. Thank
Okay.
you. Bye.
Bye.